Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so happy to be here tonight. Every time I come to one of the events that Chaplain Croix has and her husband Matthew, I learn something every single time. It's a wonderful, wonderful environment that they actually nurture. And so if you're going to become a part of this foundation, I think you should do it as soon as possible and attend as many events as possible. You'll always learn something. My name is Barnett. I'm running for President of the United States. Now, I usually get the surprised look from many people whenever I say that. It comes across and they say, "Oh my God, who are you? Where'd you come from? What do you have that other people don't have?" Well, let me ask you a question. Let's see what your candidates that are out there in the field have right now. What are they doing for you? What solutions do they have? If you look at my website, which I'm sure many of you have not as of yet, you're going to find something a little bit different. You're going to find detailed solutions. Solutions that actually work. Solutions that have been studied. And solutions that didn't come from a bank, another company that has interest in what I have to say, or another politician that needs leverage. They came directly from me. From me, my own studies, and my own team. We put the solutions together because of everyday life. People that we talk to, people like you. You're not going to see any notes from me. I don't like scripted speeches. I don't like people putting words in my mouth, and I don't speak for anyone else. If you see somebody with words in their mouth, usually that's a puppet, and that's not me. You're going to see I speak for myself. I spoke to one young lady just a little bit earlier, and you're going to notice I don't walk on eggshells. I don't use race, education, or the lack thereof, or my economic state. That is not a scenario by which we can use as a crutch for any legislation or for any lack that we have in our own lives. We have the ability to rise above it, and that's what we have to do. Let me give you just a little example that you'll find on my site. And this actually goes to the healthcare, something that's a big issue today in the economy. Everything is all-encompassing. Everything touches every other part of our economy. So if you're looking at healthcare, you're still going to be dealing with taxes, job growth, the housing industry, you name it, it's all connected. We can't continue to try to attack this piece by piece. It has to be an all-encompassing solution. And I'll give you, a lot of people say, well, I don't really understand how that works. Well, let me ask you something. If we don't have any jobs, yet we have a deficit, and we're trying to trying to recover with tax revenue, who's going to pay the taxes? Is it going to be the extremely poor? No. Why not? Because they don't have any money to pay. They're not making enough. And 50% of them, they don't pay anything anyway. All right? It's going to be the middle class. It's going to be the people that are working everyday jobs, going to work in factories, if those factories are still around, going to work at Walmart, at your restaurants, department stores. These are people that are paying all the taxes. Yes, your high-end or your upper-scale people, or what they like to call the top class, which I don't like using the class structure because I think it's demeaning. I think we're just all Americans. So, the top class, what they say, that upper 1%, they're saying they're paying most of the taxes. I have a hard time believing that. I think it's the middle class and the top class that pay on both. But let me tell you how we actually restructure this economic infrastructure to make it work for us. And this is a model that you'll find on my page. Number one, we're going to have to lower the corporate tax rate. It has to be done. We do have the highest corporate tax rate in the world at 35%. Corporations have already stated that if we lower this tax rate to 15%, they'll start bringing jobs back. Jobs that we need. And these are going to be manufacturing jobs that we don't have anymore. And I know this. My father worked in a factory for years, for my entire life. When I left, luckily, I left before all of this came about, and his job went away. His entire factory shut down. Zanesville, Ohio. I know you guys are talking about all the animals that were just out in Zanesville, Ohio. That's probably the only time you've ever heard it other than when I said it. But I'm from Zanesville, Ohio. Brockway Glass was a thriving business. It did all the Heinz bottles, a lot of the alcohol bottles, everything you can think of that came in glass was at Owens Brockway Glass. I turned 18. I left home. 2 years after I left, Owens Brockway Glass was gone. Every one of those people lost their jobs. My father retired shortly after I left. So he didn't hit that. But everyone else did. So I see those people now. And I go home every once in a while just to talk to them and see how they're doing. And their standard of living has diminished so greatly, that many of them are just looking for their next either welfare check, they're looking for the next Wendy's to pop up so they can try to get a job there. There's no jobs left. Nothing. Could you imagine being 40, 45 years old and your life's ambition is to work at Wendy's? I don't think that's part of the American dream. Can you imagine being 60 years old and your life ambition is to work at Walmart? I don't think that's the American dream. Right now, I'm just going to turn this around. If I could give you a plan right now that says we can provide or we can nurture an environment that's going to gross 30 to 40 million jobs in 4 to 8 years, would that be something you're interested in? If I could give you a plan that says, hey, you know what? There's a way to cover more people with health care than any other plan that's out there right now. And it's not going to fall on you to pay for it. Would you be interested in that? Don't get me wrong, it's not socialism. I'm not talking about that. What I am talking about is free market. Capitalism. That's what we're based on. But it's capitalism with minimal government, and it's free capitalism. Not crony capitalism. Not slighted towards those companies that we believe are going to benefit us the most. So, I lowered the tax rate, the corporate tax rate, to 12%. I've spoken with corporations already. They're agreeing to bring jobs back. Now, we have an infusion. And I'm going to say, I'm really going to be very, very conservative on the numbers. Let's say we only have 15 million jobs. 15 million jobs. I don't think Barack Obama's ever going to even let those numbers slip out of his mouth ever. 15 million jobs. That would be what we lost probably with Barack Obama. And every other candidate that's out there right now, they're saying that their highest numbers are 6 to 7 million over 4 to 6 years. We're talking about 30 to 40 million jobs by taking on this plan. Now, lowering it to 12%, the corporate tax rate, that's only the first part. That gets people back to work. That gives us a huge infusion of tax revenue. Tax revenue that we need. We so need right now. That also allows us to bring something else to the table. Speaking with some of the corporations and some of their heads, I asked them, would you be willing to pay the premiums of their health care, of your employees and your employees' families, if we would take your tax rate down to 9%? Overwhelmingly, they said yes. So, now we're talking about not free health care. I don't believe in free health care, but health care for more people than any plan could cover through the corporations. Well, wait a minute. What's government got to do with this? Nothing. We remove government from the picture. We let the corporations negotiate the rates that they're going to pay for those premiums. That means the government has no say. We're not at the bargaining table. The corporations are. Government will never be able to negotiate as good as any of our private sector businesses. Never. They never have been. And that's not the business we're supposed to be in. There's nothing in the Constitution that said the government should be regulating your health care. Anywhere in there. And if you can find it, let me know. I'll be glad to, take that correction. But I don't think you're going to find it. So, now we're talking about everyone. Everyone that's working having health care. All of your family members. How does the government benefit? How do we minimize the government? Well, since we've decreased the size of the government by taking them off of the negotiating table, we don't need those people anymore. We don't need them. That's a waste of money. It's a waste of your taxpayer dollars. I don't believe in waste. So we get rid of it. Get rid of those groups. All we need are the same people that currently document employees. That's all we need. Because they can also document that that company is providing the health care that they promised they were going to provide. That's all we need. The government takes those rates, we put them into our GSA fund. And if you guys aren't familiar with GSA, it's the Government Services Acquisition. It's the same thing we use for all the other government services that we acquire. If you are information technology, Department of Defense contracting, plumbing, just general contracting, we go through the GSA. And that means the lowest rate that any company publishes or offers to any individual or any other company is what they have to give to the government. That's what they have to offer. So that takes all negotiations off the table. Corporations that have negotiated those rates for premiums, they list them in the GSA. The government uses those numbers for their Medicare, Medicaid, and just so you know, on the average, you're talking about for Medicare and Medicaid, $2,500 a month just for their basic medical coverage from the government. So how many people are on Medicare or Medicaid? Anybody have a wild guess? Over 50 million. 50 million people on Medicare and Medicaid. If you can cut those numbers to $500, which is what most corporations pay when they are sponsoring health care, you've knocked out 3/4 of the cost right off the bat. So we're saving our taxpayers 3/4 of the amount of tax-paying dollars that are going in to medical expenses paid out by the government. That's the first part. Now, if we can do that, and just follow me here, if we can do that, and we apply that to every other sector, how much money do you think we save? Again, we're not piecemealing this. This is an all-encompassing solution. Some of these things are hard to fathom. As John Boehner said, how could you say something like this? We have a tax code in place. You're talking about destroying the entire tax code. What I'd have to say to that is, if you have a house, which is sort of like our tax code, you've got a house that's been infested with termites, tearing it down, and we have an earthquake hit right down the center, splits it in half. That house is coming down anyway. What are you going to do? You're going to put up some beams and try to prop it up for a little bit more time? Or are you going to go build a new house somewhere stable? 9 times out of 10, hopefully the smart people are going to build a new house somewhere stable. And that's what we need to do with our economic infrastructure. We have got to give it an overhaul. We have to rebuild it. We don't have time to try to put Band-Aids on it and prop it up. We've got to do something now. Don't let it fall on deaf ears. When I'm looking at each and every one of you in here tonight, I want you to think about the people that you're listening to on the television. All the candidates that you see, listen to what they're offering. Don't let it be like President Obama with lofty talk about it's going to be better when we get there. We don't know what it's going to be like yet, but when we get there, it'll be better. Listen to what they're saying. Think about what it means to you. What it means to your children. You've got to see that there's got to be a better way. America has always been exceptional. Everything about this country is exceptional. Every individual. You have the right and the power to change what goes on in government. But your power rests in the people that you put up there to represent you. And if those people that are representing you, that you put in place, don't have your ideals, don't have your best interests in mind, do you really think you're going to get what you need or want out of the government? Probably not. When I told you that that FDF was a great organization, it's because I believe that they are trying to educate people. And that's what we need. We need people to get interested in what's going on. Again, you guys are here tonight, so I know that this doesn't apply to you. But most people listen to CNN, Fox, MSNBC, Squawk Box, whatever that is. And they listen to these things, and this is where they get their viewpoints. This is what they believe. But they're not telling you everything. They're not telling you anything that hasn't been given to them by one sector of the government or the other. They give you talking points. You've got to educate yourselves. You have to take an interest in your own lives. Take an interest in this next election. Listen to the people that come out in front of you, that are pushing their ideas out there. See if there's any validity to it. See if it holds any weight. If you look at and I know you guys have heard it, the 999 plan by Kane. How many of you guys support that? How many of you guys like that?
I do.
Okay. Let me ask you, did Kane draft that? And do you know exactly what's in that plan?
No one looked at the plan himself, and I'm certain he has a staff working on that.
Kane's plan was actually drafted by a banker.
Down the road.
Art Laffer. Art Laffer.
In great detail. I don't know what's in yeah, really don't.
You'll want to educate you. Be educated on it. It was actually drafted by a banker.
Well,
and it was given to him. Right. But it was given to him.
Well, we're going to take a close look at it.
Right.
And develop, and you're right.
Mm-hmm. But what we want to do, what we have to do, is look at who's drafting these plans for these guys. See what's in it. Because if it's beneficial to the bank, because it was drafted by a banker, do you really think he's going... It's like me coming to you saying, well, I'm going to write something for you, a law that restricts me from doing what I want to do, from having my own advantage. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Then if we look at the 59-point plan by Mitt Romney.
Too many points.
Too many points. It's very convoluted. However, if you read it, and I've gone through a bit of what he had in it, and I just got overwhelmed with anger after I read it for a little bit. I saw that it was saying, hey, you know what? What we have to do is we have to we have to get rid of Medicare and Medicaid, go back to the Bush-era tax cuts, and that's great. That's great. But what about all those people that are depending on Medicare and Medicaid? I know too many of them. I talked to too many of them. One of the other things that didn't take into account are veterans and the adjusted pay that we need to have for them. I know them firsthand. I'm one of them. I see our service-disabled veterans. Again, I'm one of them. And let me give you one case in point. One gentleman who's asked me to assist with his campaign. He's a disabled veteran. He has, I believe it's stage 4 cancer. His medical benefits from the military and his Medicare will not cover the cost. So he's being turned away. This is a man who actually fought in not one but 2 wars. And he can't get the health care he needs today. That says something about this country. That says something about this nation. I think we really need to rethink, and please, by all means, educate yourselves. Be educated. Everything that I say to you, look into it. Everything that you see on my site, look into it. I welcome any feedback. Anyone that has an issue or thinks that they find something in my plan that discourages them, contact me. Contact me directly. And I address every situation, every question. And I'm happy to do so. The last thing that we need to know is that whoever you elect should not come across as the most powerful man in the country. Your president takes the office of the highest servant of the land. That's what he should see himself as, and that's what you should see him as, a servant of the people. He's got to do the will that you have for him to do, not his own. We should not try to force anything on our people. We're supposed to echo the voice of the people, and that's it. So, I'm going to cut off here. I know I've taken a lot of time, but I appreciate it. My name is Andre Barnett, and I'm running for President of the United States. Thank you.
Oh, wait.
I think you have some questions.
Well, I don't know. Does anybody have it? We'll take a couple now, and then they'll be at the end. Does anyone have a question for him? You can just come up here and ask him. Anyone? Yep.
Yeah, well, I don't necessarily have to come up there.
Okay.
But, what about the United States Constitution? Never once have you mentioned it.
That's a good question. I did not. I try to keep things. I try to keep things concise. One of the things that I have said, we need to strip government of their bloated powers, strip it back to the framework of the Constitution. Our Constitution works fine. I've heard Obama say, as well as many other elected officials say, we need a new Constitution that actually addresses the issues of today. Our Constitution works fine. It always has, and it will, as long as we do not empower government past their limits. The framework was laid for a reason. We had the 3 branches of government, and they were separated from the states. The states had their own set of powers. We should not allow the government, the federal government, to intercede, to overstep their boundaries and begin to interfere with the state's powers. Many of the questions and many of the issues of today have nothing to do with federal powers. I hear about gay marriage. I hear about education. I hear about, healthcare is just another one of those things that the federal government should not be regulating. None of these issues have to do anything with the federal government's powers. The Constitution strictly lays that out for us. So, as regarding the Constitution, I support the Constitution at its basic framework.
All right. And yeah, I'll take one more. Go ahead, Mike.
What's your position on national security? Are you for withdrawing out of all the different countries, or projecting power, or what's your position in that in terms of national security?
That's a really good question. National security. There's a lot of things to this, and I want to answer your question, but let me just take another part. Even from the jobs perspective, that's another issue of the national security that I've addressed on a couple of programs and in a couple of interviews. But as far as our troops in foreign countries, the first thing we have to realize is a lot of these countries we don't belong in. We had no stake in the game. The issue that I have with us putting our men and women in harm's way in countries where we don't belong is that it's needless bloodshed. If we look at Libya, we didn't belong there. We don't belong there. We shouldn't have even had anything to say about the NATO's actions there. We shouldn't be taking part with many of the NATO scenarios that take place. But because we have now began to allow ourselves to be really ruled by NATO, or the UN, I should say, excuse me, we're falling into a lot of pitfalls. We have various conflicts in, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya. We're still in Bosnia, in the middle, in the former Yugoslavia, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel for us to come out. If we leave these areas, many of them, they're going to fall right back into civil war. They've been fighting for a long time. We can't stop it. And I don't see why we're trying to force it.
Thank you so much. What else? What we're going to do is I'm going to call Drew Beeman. If we're going to give Andre Barnett a round of applause, and then we'll call him back.
Hey, I used to. Just so everybody knows, we met with Andre a few months ago for several hours, and I wrote up a nice article on called Meet Andre Barnett, and we'll repost that on the fdfny.org blog so that if you'd like to get an objective opinion of his policy and whatnot, like I said, I spent hours with him and asking questions. And, we'll put that on the
We gave you the
blog.
good and the bad. Not that we slammed him a lot, but there were some things, just so you know. It is objective, is what I'm just trying to say. Is that
Right.
we didn't, we met with him and the things that we agreed
Obviously,
with.
check out his website too to learn more.
Yeah.
But